Hello, I'm Rosie and today I'm going to be doing my March TBR. This is slightly later than normal, so I've already read one book this month and that was Wayfarer by Alexandra Bracken, which I really enjoyed. That brought a perfect end to that duology and I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So I've read Wayfarer, but there's still plenty of time in the month for other books, and so I've selected a mix of books I quite like to read. I'm not going to make myself stick to this list because I found that when I do that my enjoyment of the read drops significantly, because I feel like I'm having to force myself to read these books rather than take them out and read them because I want to read them. I feel that if I have like a loose guide of books to read, then the choice isn't overwhelming, but also I'm not going to stick to it if I don't feel like reading these books, because I don't think that's the most enjoyable way of reading. So without further ado, let's begin. I'm currently reading The Disney Touch by Ron Grover. The subtitle of this is How a Daring Management Team Revived an Entertainment Empire. And I'm halfway through this. I started reading it back in January, but then got stuck in a reading slump and just didn't continue it. I'm actually quite enjoying it. It's about how, obviously, it's about the Disney company and how it was struggling after Walt Disney died and its subsequent rise back to power, really, thanks to a couple of people who basically turned the company around, and I'm finding it really interesting. It's written in a way that's easily accessible to, I feel, probably anyone if you're interested enough in Disney, and I'm quite enjoying it. This is my kind of non-fiction pick for the month. I'm trying to read a mix of fiction, non-fiction and different genres, etc., just to diversify my reading a bit more. So this ticks that box, but it's also interesting. I then have The Lonely by Andrew Michael Hurley. I keep wanting to call it The Lonely, which is really annoying, but this book was lent to me by a friend at work and I'm quite curious to read it. I've heard a few things about it, but I don't really want to know too much going in. But from what I've heard, it's a kind of thriller mystery, and it's about 2 brothers, and I believe one of them dies, I'm not entirely sure. And as you can see, it won the Costa Book Awards in 2015. I'll see how this goes, but it sounds pretty cool and slightly creepy, and I think that's just kind of what you need in spring. I then have Wind Witch by Susan Dennard. I am so excited to read this book. I've heard so many good things about it. I listened to Truth Witch, I think it was last month, as an audiobook to remind myself of the story, and I've been wanting to read it for ages, but there's just been other books I felt I should read, like other books that I've been lent, and review books as well, that I've just not had the time, and I'm really desperate to read it. I've heard it's got a transgender character, which you don't really see much of in fantasy at all, so I'm so excited to see how that is done. I've heard mixed things about it, but I'm going to go in with an open mind and see how that goes, but I just want to see how the story continues. And for the book summary, I won't say too much because it'll spoil Truth Witch, but it basically continues the story of Sophia and Isolde, and I think, and it picks up from where the last book left off, as you would expect. So that's Wind Witch. Then, in a very different twist of genres, I've got Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. I own these for quite a few of Jane Austen's books in this version. I think I've only read Pride and Prejudice, so I really want to start breaking into more classics, Jane Austen in particular, because I've got all those books, and I thought this one would be a good one to start because it's quite short, and also it didn't have a place to fit on my bookcase of to-be-read books, so I kind of need to read it. That's not a good excuse for reading, but it's the one I'm going to go with. But I don't really know much about it. I'm going to assume that it's a typical Jane Austen with romance and intrigue and that kind of thing, so very different to the kind of books I usually like, because I'm not a huge fan of romance, but we'll see how that goes. Next up, I have The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. I got into such a Neil Gaiman mood last month. I listened to The Graveyard Book, and then I read Neverwhere and I adored both of them so much. So I'm quite excited to start reading The Ocean at the End of the Lane. This is the one of his books that I've had the most divisive comments on. Some people hate it, some people love it. So I'm really intrigued to read it and find out where I stand on that divide. Will I like it? Will I hate it? Will I be somewhere in the middle? Who knows? I really don't know much about this, despite hearing many comments about it. So I'm really going to go into it blind, which I'm quite excited about. I then have quite a short and snappy book, hopefully, which is Feminism, one of the very short introduction books. It's been written by Margaret Walters, and I got it for Christmas, and I think it'd be quite an interesting read. It's quite short and it's quite small, so it'll fit in my handbag and I can read it on the train fairly easily. But I'm not sure if I'll get to this one because I do have the Disney touch to read, and I think I don't like reading too much non-fiction because I do find it takes me a long time to read and I end up just not really enjoying it so much. So I may give this one a skip, but we'll see how it goes because I do want to read the Disney touch, and this may be maybe a later in the month kind of book. Finally, I have Empress of a Thousand Skies by Rhoda Pelletza. Sorry if I say that wrong. This was in the Fair Elite box for February, and it's a space opera that follows a empress, the last of her line, as she is caught up in an incident and everyone believes she is dead. This is all in the cover. I'm so excited to read this book. From what I understand, it's an own voices novel. The main character is a woman of colour, so I'm just really excited to see that in a space opera novel, really, a young adult space opera, and just read the story because the story sounds super exciting as well. So this is going to be, I'm going to try and read this one before the next Fairy Elite box comes. So I've not got much time on that front, but I'll give it a go and we will see. So those are a few of the books I am going to hopefully get to this month. As I said before, it may change based on how I'm feeling or if I get any other books that maybe take my fancy. There's a bit of a mix there, which I'm quite pleased about because it just keeps reading interesting, so I don't feel like I'm reading the same story over and over again, which I have found to happen if I just stick to, say, YA fantasy. There's a lot of reoccurring themes in those books. So this will hopefully give me a bit more variety and expand my reading tastes into areas that I perhaps hadn't thought that they would go, or discover new styles of writing, new genres that I kind of didn't really think about before, so I'm quite looking forward to it. And I will see you next time. Goodbye!